He said I was his life, held me like I was his salvation, whispered my name in every shattered breath. He said I was his life, held me like I was his salvation, whispered my name in every shattered breath. And I believed him. Every lie, every sigh, every touch that felt like a promise written across my skin. I didn't see the warning signs then. I didn't recognize the danger in soft words spoken too soon, or how trauma can make illusions look like love. At the time, it just felt safe. And I hadn't felt safe in a long, long time. When he found me, I was already on my knees, figuratively and literally. My past had hollowed me out, left me fragile. Years of emotional abuse, fake friends, failed love, and betrayals I couldn't even speak of without trembling. My world had become a quiet battlefield of survival. I smiled in public, cried in bathrooms, and pretended that healing was a path I'd eventually find if I just kept walking blindly. And then came him. Aiden. His name still tastes like metal on my tongue, something once sweet, now poisonous. He wasn't loud when he entered my life. No fireworks, no grand entrance. Just a calm presence in a world that constantly spun out of control. He saw me at my lowest, sitting on the steps of that cafe, face streaked with tears, clutching my phone like it could dial someone who actually cared. He offered me coffee and silence. No questions. Just warmth. And that silence. It felt like safety. That was his gift, making pain feel poetic. He slowly became my world. He learned my patterns, read my moods like scripture. When I couldn't breathe, he became my air. When I couldn't speak, he held my hand like my silence was a language only he could understand. He said things like, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." And I clung to those words like a child gripping a nightlight in a dark room. I told him things I'd never told anyone. The things that kept me up at 2 a.m., the shame, the guilt, the fear. And he looked at me like I was brave, not broken. He made me feel strong for surviving, not weak for suffering. And so, I loved him. God, I loved him with every ruined part of me. But looking back, I think that's exactly what he wanted. He didn't love me despite my damage. He loved me because of it. I was a challenge, a fragile thing to mold, shape, twist. And once I started to stand on my own, to heal, to shine, that's when the shift began. It was subtle at first. Little comments that cut like paper. A look of disgust disguised as concern. Praise that came with a poison tip. "You're so strong now," he said one night, fingers brushing my jaw. "Almost like you don't need me anymore." I laughed. I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. That was the first night he didn't come home. The first night I sat by the window, waiting, heart tight in my chest, wondering if I'd done something wrong. And that was only the beginning. Because what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the man I had given everything to was never trying to build me up. He was preparing to break me in ways I didn't even know I could break. And soon, the darkness would come. But not the kind I feared. The kind I would become. They say love makes you blind, but it's not blindness. It's willful ignorance. You see the cracks. You feel the shift. You just don't want to believe it. I started noticing things. Aiden grew colder, distant. Not always. Just enough to keep me confused. Enough to make me question if I was imagining it. He'd come home late without explanation, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. He'd tell me I was paranoid, that I was too emotional, that my past was clouding my judgment. "You're so used to pain, you don't know what real love looks like," he whispered one night when I confronted him. His arms wrapped around me like a noose, and I believed him again. God, I wanted to believe him. Because if he was lying, then I had thrown my entire soul into a lie. And that kind of truth, it doesn't just hurt. It annihilates you. He started pulling away from the things that once made us feel like us. No more late night talks about our dreams. No more quiet mornings with coffee and forehead kisses. No more small acts of affection that once made life feel survivable. Everything became transactional, mechanical, conditional. I'd reach for him in bed and find nothing but cold sheets. One night, I woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating under the pillow. I never checked his phone before. Trust was something sacred to me, probably because I never had it growing up. But that night, something in me shifted. Or maybe something finally woke up. I picked it up with trembling hands. Messages. Dozens of them. From her. Last night was perfect. When are you leaving her? You said she was broken. Is she still crying every day? You're too good for someone so pathetic. My breath stopped. My hands didn't. I scrolled, and every word became a dagger. Not because he cheated. That would have hurt, yes. But it was how he did it. How he spoke about me. How he used my vulnerability as punchlines, as excuses, as proof that I was weak. She's like a wounded puppy, he wrote. She clings to me like I'm oxygen. I put the phone down, numb. My whole body buzzed with a quiet rage I had never felt before. Not even during my childhood, not even when people walked away from me like I was disposable. This was different. This wasn't abandonment. This was targeted. He knew what he was doing. He sought me out when I was broken. He made me trust him, made me believe I was safe. And then he used my pain to entertain someone else. Aiden wasn't just a liar. He was a predator. And I had loved him. The front door opened, and he stepped in like nothing was wrong. Smiling. Carefree. Like he hadn't just gutted my soul with 1,000 typed words. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the man who held me through my panic attacks. I saw the man who caused them. He noticed the phone on the table and froze. His smile faltered, only for a second, but that second was enough. You went through my phone? He said, voice tight. I didn't answer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled. Because something inside me had died. And something else had been born in its place. Something in me died that night, and something else was born. He stared at me like I was a child who had touched something forbidden. Like I was the one who had betrayed him. That's the thing about manipulators. They play the victim so well. They almost convince you it's your fault they shattered you. But not this time. Not anymore. I didn't speak. Didn't yell. Didn't break down like he expected. I just sat there on the edge of the bed with his phone in plain sight, the evidence glowing in the dark like the truth finally daring to show its face. Aren't you going to say anything? He asked, softer now. Controlled. Calculating. Like he was already planning his next move. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who had once wiped tears from my eyes just to learn how they fell. At the man who kissed my scars so he could find the softest places to cut. I hope she's worth it, I said. He laughed. Laughed. You're so dramatic, he said, shaking his head. I told you not to let your trauma dictate how you see things. My trauma? That word snapped something inside me. Like he was holding a match to everything I'd ever tried to bury. You didn't fall in love with me, I whispered. You fell in love with my brokenness. His silence was louder than any confession. I stood up slowly. My knees were trembling, but my spine had never felt straighter. I walked past him without another word. He didn't follow me. Maybe he thought I'd cool down. That I'd return like I always had before, apologizing for being too emotional, too sensitive, too me. But I didn't go far. I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and sank to the cold tiles. That's when the dam broke. But these weren't tears of heartbreak. They were grief. Grief for the girl I had been when I met him. For the trust I had handed over so willingly. For every moment I mistook manipulation for love. That night, I cried like I was mourning a death. Because I was. And when I stood back up, hours later, something had changed. The girl who trusted blindly was gone. The woman left behind. She was dangerous. The next morning, I made him breakfast. I smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I acted like nothing had happened. He looked relieved, so easily fooled by the mask I wore now. But inside, I was studying him like a map, learning the pressure points, memorizing the exits, counting his habits, his weaknesses, his dependencies. Because I wasn't going to just leave. No, that would have been too kind. He didn't deserve an ending. He deserved a lesson. He needed to feel what it was like to build a world around someone and have it collapse under his feet. To look in the mirror and see nothing but the echo of someone else's revenge staring back. He turned my love into poison. So I would become the venom in his veins, slow, silent, irreversible. And I would make sure he never saw it coming. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted him to watch it all burn. Aiden thought it was over. That a few hollow apologies, a fake bouquet, and some forced kisses would make me forget what I saw. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. The girl who cried herself to sleep beside a liar? She died the night I opened that phone. The woman who rose from her ashes? She was deliberate, cold, focused. And oh, she was patient. I spent the next few weeks wearing the same mask he once wore with ease. I pretended to forgive him. Pretended I was healing. He believed me because he believed I was still weak. That was his fatal mistake. He didn't know I had stopped loving him. I had started studying him. Every lie he told, I wrote down. Every woman he texted, I memorized. I opened secret email accounts, collected screenshots, set up a private drive. I recorded his voice during fights when he twisted words to make me question my sanity. I documented the gaslighting, the financial manipulation, every cruelty wrapped in a soft smile. And all the while, I played the role of the forgiving girlfriend. I let him believe I was still drowning. But the truth was, I was building a noose. Not a literal one. A social, emotional, financial noose. One I'd placed gently around his life and tightened with every passing day. Slowly. Quietly. Until he had nowhere to run. One night, I caught him texting her again. The same girl. The one he told me he'd blocked. I smiled when I saw it. Because it told me two things. He was arrogant enough to think I wouldn't check again. He was consistent and predictable. Good. That made him easier to destroy. I hacked his laptop. Not to spy. No, not yet. Just to plant a few keystroke loggers. I needed access to everything. His emails, his financial records, the secret account he thought I didn't know about. Turns out, manipulation leaves fingerprints everywhere. He had hidden more than just women. He had debts. Legal threats. A past filled with restraining orders he had conveniently failed to mention. I wasn't his first victim, but I would be his last. During the day, I laid my traps. At night, I played the role. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the perfume he said made me smell like home. I kissed him with lips that tasted like betrayal. And he kissed me back, unaware that I was already sharpening the knife. The first thing I took from him was control. I started forgetting things. Canceling plans last minute. Laughing at his attempts to guilt me. I watched him squirm when he realized I no longer feared his disappointment. Then I took his peace. I let little truths slip in front of his friends. Seeds of doubt. A suggestion that he was struggling. A comment about his temper. A nervous laugh followed by, he didn't mean to break my phone. Just enough to stain his image, subtly, quietly. And finally, I began to take his image. I started posting. Nothing obvious, just hints. My smile coming back. My skin glowing. Captions like, healing is watching the devil choke on his own poison. He asked who I was talking about. I smiled and said, just something I read. He didn't know it yet, but the woman he thought he destroyed was already building the world he'd never be allowed into again. And soon, he'd be begging for mercy. I started taking everything he thought he'd keep forever. Revenge isn't loud. Not at first. It's a whisper in the dark. A grin behind a kiss. A hand that looks like it's reaching out to hold you. until it pulls the ground from beneath your feet. And that's exactly how I came for Aiden. He still thought I loved him. Still believed I was broken enough to stay. Still believed I was the girl who needed him to breathe, to eat, to exist. He didn't realize I had already left him mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Now, I was just rearranging the ruins. The first thing I did was isolate his support. The friends he bragged about. The ones who laughed too loudly at his jokes and believed every polished lie he told. I got close to them. Not through seduction or flattery. Through truth. Subtle, honest truths. At a party, I accidentally let one of his friends see the messages he sent another girl. Didn't accuse. Didn't scream. Just handed him my phone and said, "Hey, is this normal?" His friend didn't say a word. But a week later, Aiden stopped getting invited to things. Then I visited his workplace. Nothing dramatic, just lunch. I smiled at the receptionist, greeted everyone with polite eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for checking in on me last time." He told me not to tell anyone what happened, but I'm safe now. No details. Just shadows. Enough for rumors to bloom in silence. And bloom they did. By the end of the month, HR had launched a routine review of workplace behavior. I never filed a report. I didn't have to. He'd sown enough seeds himself. Next, I moved money. Quietly. Legally. Every bill in my name, gone. Every shared account, emptied into mine through legitimate transfers. I made sure he never noticed. Aiden was careless with the details. He liked feeling like the provider. I let him feel that way until he woke up one morning and his credit card stopped working. He asked if I knew anything about it. I said I'd look into it. I didn't. Then came the email. Sent to every woman I found in his inbox. No rage. No accusations. Just, "Hi. I was hurt too. I know he promised you everything." I believed him when he said I was the only one. He lied to both of us. But don't worry. I'm not here for revenge against you. I just thought you deserved the truth. And the truth. Oh, it spreads like wildfire. Aiden came home to chaos that night. 3 of them had shown up at his apartment, yelling, crying, demanding answers. He looked at me like I was the cause of it all. But I wasn't. He was. I just held up the mirror. That night, he screamed. Threw things. Said I was destroying his life. And I smiled. Because finally, he understood. He understood what it felt like to be powerless. To watch your world collapse in slow motion. To realize the person who loved you most now held the blade to your throat and had no intention of stopping. But I wasn't done. No. I hadn't even touched his most fragile possession yet. His ego. And that would be the next to fall. I let the world watch him break. Piece by piece. Aiden had always been 2 people. There was the version the world saw, charming, successful, thoughtful. The kind of man who held doors open, donated to charities, remembered birthdays, made strangers feel special. And then, there was the man I knew. The one who whispered cruelty like it was affection. Who turned my fears into jokes. Who broke me, then told me to be grateful he stayed. But now the cracks were visible. And I made sure they spread wide enough for everyone to see inside. I didn't need to lie about him. I only had to tell the truth. Because truth, when exposed at the right time, in the right way, is louder than any lie he ever told. It started with the podcast. A friend of mine ran one, a show about survival, healing, and stories no one talks about. I never mentioned his name. Never pointed fingers. I didn't have to. I just told my story. My voice trembled. My truth bled through every word. I spoke about being gaslit. About falling in love with someone who studied my pain just to weaponize it. The episode went viral. People related. People listened. And those who knew Aiden, they listened too. His coworkers started whispering. His friends stopped defending him. The carefully curated image he'd spent years building cracked under the weight of my calm, devastating honesty. He still had no idea I was behind it. Not fully. Until the charity gala. He was being honored that night. Some award for his inspiring mentorship or whatever lie he'd sold them. I showed up uninvited. Dressed in red. The color of warnings. The color of war. He spotted me from across the room and froze. He walked toward me with panic hidden behind polished charm. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, handed him a champagne glass, and said, "Celebrating." "Don't cause a scene," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Oh, I won't," I said, tilting my head. "That's not my style, remember?" But what I had done was email the podcast link to the board that selected his award. Anonymously. Along with screenshots. Messages. Evidence. Receipts. I didn't need to take the mic to ruin him. I just had to tell the truth in the right ears. By the time the host announced his name, the applause was awkward. Scattered. Eyes avoided him. Conversations turned to murmurs. Whispers flooded the corners of the room like smoke before a fire. He accepted the award with shaking hands. Because he knew. He knew I had taken the one thing he valued most, his reputation. After the event, I walked out without looking back. That night, he messaged me over a dozen times. Voicemails. Emails. Begging. Bargaining. Blaming. All the stages of grief, delivered like poison in paragraphs. He said I ruined him. He said I turned everyone against him. He said I destroyed his life. And maybe I did. But only after he tried to destroy me. Only after he taught me how cold love can be when it's nothing but control dressed in kisses. And yet, I wasn't done. Because the final act, the part that would truly end him, wasn't about taking away his power. It was about making him feel invisible. The same way he made me feel. And that came next. I took the one thing he could never replace, my absence. By now, Aiden's world had collapsed. The friends who once raised glasses in his name stopped replying to his texts. His workplace put him under review. The women he toyed with, they found each other. And me? I had become the ghost that haunted his every room. But the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's disappearance. And it was time. I didn't block him. That would have given him closure. I didn't scream at him in public. That would have fed his ego, made him feel important enough to deserve my rage. No. I simply vanished. No forwarding address. No goodbye. No trace. Just silence. The first week, he messaged me like a man possessed. "We need to talk. I made mistakes, but you're being unfair. You think you're the victim, but you're not. You'll regret this." But I didn't respond. I watched. I watched as he spiraled without an audience. As the walls he once built out of lies now became his prison. As the silence he used against me turned into the echo chamber of his own guilt. I had taken back everything. My self-worth. My voice. My story. But more than anything, I had taken away his favorite toy. Control. I heard from mutuals that he was unraveling. He started drinking more. Showing up at events he wasn't invited to. He got into a shouting match at a networking event when someone mentioned the podcast. He even tried to date again, but every time, the women already knew who he really was. Because I never said his name. But they all recognized his behavior. He tried reaching out to people who once adored him. But people only follow charm when it works. And his charm? It had cracked like porcelain. One day, I received a handwritten letter. The envelope was torn. The ink smudged. It was 5 pages long. He begged, pleaded, promised therapy, accountability, change, love. He ended it with, "Please, just say something. Anything. Even if it's to tell me you hate me. Just don't ignore me like this." I can't take the silence. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Because this wasn't about hatred anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about power. About finally living a life that had nothing to do with him. Because what he never understood was this. He broke me to keep me. But when I broke free, he lost the one thing that validated his existence, me. I wasn't his anymore. Not his tragedy. Not his puppet. Not his story. I had become the one thing he could never touch again, the woman who walked away without looking back. But still, there was one final twist. Something I hadn't told him. Something that would haunt him longer than silence ever could. And that would come last. I let him live with the one truth that would haunt him forever. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it's the silence after the storm. The emptiness you leave behind in a place you once filled with love. Sometimes, it's not what you do to them. It's what you take with you when you go. And Aiden? He didn't even know what I took. Until it was far too late. Months passed. He still tried to reach out, here and there. Emails. Messages. Random coincidental run-ins I knew were planned. But I never responded. I'd built a new life. Quiet. Peaceful. Honest. Surrounded by people who didn't question my tears or need to dominate my healing. People who saw me, not as something to fix or control, but as a woman rebuilding her soul. And still, deep down, a small piece of me waited. Waited for the day he'd truly feel what I felt. Not anger. Not loneliness. But emptiness. And then one morning, it happened. I got the message. From an unknown number. No greeting. No name. Just one sentence. Was it mine? My breath caught. I read the message again. Was it mine? He knew. Somehow, he knew. And just like that, the final thread unraveled. He remembered that one night, months before everything fell apart. That night I stood in the kitchen holding a positive pregnancy test, tears streaming down my face. And he smiled. Not because he was happy, but because he knew I wouldn't leave now. That's what he thought. That's what he counted on. But what he didn't know was that I lost it. Not because of stress or bad luck or nature, but because of him. Because of the screaming, the nights I couldn't sleep, the walls I curled up beside while he texted other women in the next room. Because of the weight of emotional torture that tore my body apart from the inside. I had cried. I had mourned. I had blamed myself. Until I realized the truth. He didn't deserve to know. He didn't deserve to carry that memory. That grief. That child. So I let him live like he never had it. And now? Now he was asking the question far too late. Was it mine? I looked at the message. No name. Just desperation. The kind of desperation that comes when someone realizes they never really knew what they lost. And I typed my reply. You'll never know. And that will be your punishment. I blocked the number. Not in anger. In peace. Because the truth is, I never wanted to ruin him. I only wanted him to feel what I felt. To be haunted. By silence. By memory. By the question that would never be answered. He thought he broke me. But all he did was build the woman who learned how to survive without him. And now, he will spend the rest of his life wondering whether he once had a future growing inside the very woman he destroyed. But he'll never know. And that is what cold revenge truly looks like. The end.